challenges with this weather, and you just did a great job getting everybody an opportunity to find some warm place to sleep. Councilor Tucker.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for what you do. I've been knowing Pat since 2014. I've actually worked with the veteran homeless population, so I appreciate you. Can you tell us one more time about the sign up for the training?
Yes, I will send a link to Clerk of Council so she can send it out to everybody. That way I make sure I don't miss anyone. And that way it can also be posted as part of the official notes. But it's on our website. It's unitedcv.org or at homeforgoodcv.org. You can sign up to volunteer. We do our training. The training is virtual. It takes about 30 minutes. We have a really cool app that we use our phones, boom, boom, boom. And we'll take about 2 weeks of play surveys just to get everyone into the groove and everything else. And so it's really, really, really easy to do, but really impactful.
Okay, in the shelter
camp. The shelter camp, yes, right, you're correct, ma'am. It's a 2-day event. Monday, the 23rd, we do our sheltered count, where we'll go out about 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the evening to all of the shelters in our community and do the surveys with the residents of the shelter on that night. We wrap that up usually between 8 and 8:30, and then the next morning we're back at 5:30. Some of us don't sleep that night, but we're back at 5:30 the next morning. We have escorts from Muskogee County Sheriff's Department, Columbus Police Department, Phoenix City Police Department, Russell County Sheriff's Department, Columbus State University Police is participating this year as escorts as well, and as surveyors. We'll go out to the Riverwalk, under bridges, and everywhere in between. Any kind of encampments that we have or may have spotted, we have people out now surveying the community in total to make sure that we don't miss anybody. So that count will start at 6 o'clock. I said we'll hit the streets about 5:30-ish, start counting at 6, and that'll go to around noon that day.
All right, thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Huff.
Thank you for the presentation. Question,
Yes,
on the past, did we use any of the information that we gathered in the past in working with homelessness for this situation?
It absolutely drives how we do our community planning. So when we're looking at, do we focus on single adults experiencing homelessness? Do we focus on families experiencing homelessness? Are we looking at those with a history with the criminal justice system? Are we looking with those with mental illness, substance abuse? All of those are in those little 17 question surveys that we do, and that helps us to drive what we're looking at when we're setting up programs and everything else. In fact, I was just talking to the sheriff about a program that we're looking to work with the Department of Housing, Urban Development, and SAMHSA, which is Mental Health and Substance Abuse Administration, to those who with history in the criminal justice system and helping them make those transitions back to the community. And we've seen a lot of that in the numbers. So yes, sir. In short, yeah, we use it to make community decisions.
Okay, I was just wondering, making sure we didn't duplicate maybe some answers that we have already from the past and moving forward.
We are actually very proud that over the past couple of years we have been able to take forces and join forces and understand that one organization or one person can't do it all. But if you do this, well, let me do what I do, then you can do that, and then you'll do the other. So making sure that it's a collaborative effort and it's not a my client, your client thing, it's our community member.
Has there been any movement as far as the people who are out, for lack of a better word, under the bridges,
the unsheltered,
that want to be there, they don't want to come in? Has there been any movement on how we attract them to come off the street?
We made huge strides in the past year, and when I say huge strides, we have folks that were out for 4 or 5 years, that were unsheltered for 4 or 5 years, who are now sheltered.
Okay.
So we're making strides, and it's about those relationships and that trust and going back time and time and time again to say, are you ready? Are you ready? And so it's about the community showing up and doing what you say you're going to do every time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I imagine you'll probably get some responses from around the table for that training.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next is Ms. Teresa L. Amin, representing the Southern Anti-Racism Network regarding gentrification, evictions, and access to affordable housing. Ms. L. Amin, welcome. No, you're fine. If you would, I know you know, state your name and address.
Teresa L. Amin, 3911 Steam Mill Road. Gentrification is something that a lot of folks don't fully comprehend. The CDC has an archived website because the program where the CDC identified gentrification as a health issue is no longer funded. Healthy Community Design Initiative, also known as a Built Environment and Health Initiative, no longer funded. Gentrification is often defined as the transformation of neighborhoods from low value to high value. This change has the potential to cause displacement of long-time residents and businesses. Displacement happens when long-time or original neighborhood residents move from a gentrified area because of higher rents, mortgages, and property taxes. Gentrification is a housing, economic, and health issue that affects a community's history and culture and reduces social capital. It often shifts a neighborhood's characteristics, racial, ethnic composition, and household income by adding new stores and resources in previously run-down neighborhoods. Well, Columbus is unique because Columbus has a property tax freeze. However, in Durham, we would say when Starbucks shows up, you know you're gentrified. On Macon Road, when Panera Bread and Starbucks showed up, I say it's on. TAD, tax allocation districts, when I heard that, 30 years giving you the power to say what the economic development is. I watched that carefully. I voted against it because citizens shouldn't give up that right. But what you should know is that in Midtown, just look at what's happening. Gentrification, big time. Gentrification in the Buena Vista corridor, Mr. City Council Member, Mr. Barnes. I just think it's important for those of you who are associated with real estate. I handed you something at the last council meeting about my personal situation on gentrification because the investors coming in here from out west, buying up properties and raising the rents, unbelievable. I have an open records request in for the number of evictions. I've already talked to Captain Stinson in the sheriff's office, and she said it's a lot. She's getting that data together. So I'll be back in a couple of months to talk about it. But what you should know is that on January 26th at the Columbus Public Library, 6 p.m., you might want to be there. I'll send out some information to the clerk as soon as the flyer is ready. Affordable housing justice. We're going to start a tenants organization in this community to fight back. I go to court today at 145 Municipal Court to face those investors trying to evict me after 12 years. So I do know in real time what the investors are doing in this community, raising the rents so that affordable housing, it's just out of reach even for a person like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elamine. All right. Next, Mr. Marvin Broadwater, Sr., representing the State of Georgia Organization of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, regarding an announcement of fatherhood conversation. Welcome, Mr. Broadwater.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. I'd ask
you.
that you not start that clock until the last council person receives that
Man,
flight.
I got you. Actually, we don't start it until after you've stated your name and address, so it's up to you when it starts.
Yes, sir. I will say good morning in preliminary before I give my name. I think that is appropriate in this August body. Hold that up for me, sir.
And happy birthday to Reverend Chester.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members, and Mr. City Attorney and Mr. City Manager. I pray you are well and Happy New Year. My name is Marvin Broadwater, Sr. I reside at 3004 Slippery Rock Court, Columbus, Georgia, 31909. I stand here with my illustrious colleagues, Reverend Adrian Chester and Mr. Nate Sanderson, members of the City Manager says the greatest fraternity known to man, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. As always, we thank you for your continued servant leadership in this community. Approximately 5 years ago, I came to you to ask your support with assisting me in informing your constituents about a fatherhood program called the Fatherhood Conversation. Since that time, have you know, we have surpassed our expectations with this program. This program has been conducted in over 30 cities in our great state, to just name a few: Marietta, Savannah, Augusta, Conyers, Covington, Albany, Thomasville, Decatur, Cartersville, and Rome. And we're here again as this program has come full circle, and we are about to conduct our 35th installation of this program. And let me give you a couple of stats for those of you that like stats. In just the last year alone, this program, just the last year alone, found jobs, employment for 1,500 fathers. But that's not the most impressive thing. The most impressive thing is that we put the father back in the lives of 240,000 children in the state of Georgia. So this program is a success. And just to give you an idea, those fathers who are unaware of the services and benefits this program affords will have a chance to engage the subject matter experts. The goals of the Fatherhood Conversation are to inform the community of the numerous services offered to the non-custodial parent, especially fathers, and to dispel any misconceptions of the Georgia Department of Human Services fatherhood programs. Topics to be discussed but not limited to are driver's license reinstatement, child support services, GED enrollment. One young man entered the program. He was making $0. In 1 year, he went from zero, Councilman House, to $83,000 because he got his CDL license. So this program works. We believe all challenging issues facing our governing and policy-making bodies are interrelated. Crime, economy, homelessness, unemployment, domestic violence, child abuse, neglect, drug use, prison population, poverty, and a plethora of other challenging community concerns. If we dim the radiance on one issue, we consequently decrease the radiance of another simultaneously. fathers who find themselves in child support arrears will benefit tremendously from this program. The plan is to blanket the city and inform all citizens of this program and its benefits. I yield back, and I thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Well, Mr. Broadwater, thank you, and thank you for what I think you termed it the greatest fraternity in the world does. I don't know if you're the greatest, but you're certainly the most humble. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. God bless all of you.
Thank you for what you're
Continue to
doing.
do what you do.
y'all too. Thank you. Oh, Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, is this on our website, this information? Particularly the scan codes, we need to make sure that that goes up so that, I would like for us to do that if we can, to get that up on the city website so that people can take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you, gentlemen. Counselor Tucker, did you have, we've got.
It's gonna be real.
Okay. Counselor Tucker?
Yes, and it was really in response to what Ms. Elamine mentioned in reference to housing. I was at ACCG's board meeting, and that was one of the main conversations that we had around the table was the housing issues that we're having, and it's complex issues, and exactly what Ms. Elamine was mentioning is institutional investors that's coming in. And I also sit on the Human Services and Education Committee for NACO, and what we have started is a housing task force on the national level, but also on the state level, based on some of the concerns that the citizens are having and what we're seeing with institutional investors coming in, buying up large portions of our properties. But Georgia is number 2. Out of all the states, we have the highest number of institutional investors, and that's why it is really top right now on the legislative agenda, even though we didn't approve it here in Muskogee County. But it is number 1, the most, I mean, it's just really bad, because right now people really are being priced out of their communities, and it's very unfortunate. So I just wanted to add that it is being looked at, even though it's not being looked at right here, it's being looked at with me, because I do sit on that committee, and I mentioned that we don't want to just be a metro Atlanta issue, that this is a urban, suburban, and rural issue. So you have a voice right now on the state level and on the national level. So I just wanted to
Well, and
let
to
you know.
follow up with that, I think all of the organizations, I know GMA, at their board of directors meeting, they've been focusing on this too. And I think we support, obviously, I think everybody does, trying to make sure that affordable housing continues to be made available. I think the only concern that some counselors that I heard, and I knew that I had about the local resolution, was the rent control. And I think just blanket rent control is a dangerous and slippery slope. But I do think that we have to continue to try to find different types of ways, whether
Yeah.
it's through.
Well, we
funding.
had those conversations, and
Yeah.
it does get very partisan. And, you know, when we sit in those rooms, it's on those levels with ACCG, those are partisan positions, those county positions. So we had some real conversations in that room, and that is one of the issues, is governmental policies, regulations, and laws, and that is what's holding up Georgia, where in other states like New York and, I mean, I hate to say it, but Democrat-led states, they're doing more of the rent controls and they're seeing less of the issues. But in areas like Georgia, we are really becoming, we're becoming like one of the main issues. So it is a national issue, And I just wanted to
Well,
put it out there. So when
I
I
got
go
you.
to,
The only thing I'll take exception with is the partisanship. It may be happening up at NACO, but I don't think around here it was so much a partisan issue. It was just a difference in philosophy.
yeah, no, you have real conversations,
Yep.
around the table. So we know what's going on in Georgia. So just let you know.
Councilor Crabb?
Some of the actions I've taken on this subject is, I have been in contact with the local Columbus Board of Realtors president, the new one, Doug Jeffcoat, and he has initiated a new committee, which is the Property Management Committee, and so I'll be working with him on that. Also, we will have a new president for the Georgia Association of Realtors next week. That convention is going to be here in Columbus, and one of our own, Lisa Scully, will be inaugurated. And so I feel that we have two very good positions here in Columbus where the board that are able to talk with the mayor and myself on this issue and come up with some solutions from the standpoint from the landlord's perspective also. And because there will be no success if we choose landlords versus tenants. They have to work together. So those are the actions that have taken and plan to take to be very involved in what we can do. The National Association of Realtors happens to be one of the largest lobbying groups in the United States, and I feel confident that we'll be able to help in this situation.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, and next on the public agenda, Mr. John Scott, regarding the Columbus Police Department. Mr. Scott, welcome. If you would, give your name and address, and we'll start the timer right after you finish that.
John Scott, Columbus, Georgia. Well, you need
His
address?
street address, yes.
913 Wilshire, Columbus, Georgia.
Thank you.
I'm here to address you on, and I've really enjoyed what I've heard so far today. Can you hear me? Okay. But I'm here to address you because at the direction of the FBI and the Department of Justice and the Attorney General's office, I spoke to them in regards to a matter that's locally. And when I heard you discussing responsibility, accountability, transparency, you couldn't have hit the nail better on the head. And in regards to the Columbus Police Department, there is none of any of that. And I come from a well-respected family. Some of the council members know me. But, and I spoke to the mayor in regards to some of this. But, I mean, I grew up in Columbus. I've been here 50 years. I'm an Eagle Scout, Scoutmaster for several years. I was actually over 4 cities, director over the Scouts for Auburn, Phoenix City, Columbus, Pine Mountain, overall district commissioner. And I had top secret clearance when I went in the Navy. They went all the way back to my 6th grade teacher who actually called my mother up to say, you realize they're checking him out this much. So I've been around a lot of people, and I was raised by, my dad was a retired colonel from Fort Benning, brigade commander out there for armor. And he raised me right. He raised my brother right. We never had any incidences with the police in our entire life. 50 years, no problems. But we ran into a situation here where I was falsely arrested about 3 years ago, before COVID, well, about the time COVID broke out. And it didn't make it to trial. They threw it out. But the problem was the automobile that my mother had was searched. And I have no problem with that either, except when they searched the property that was in there and they removed it, they never returned it. So, of course, I consulted with the head of the police department, the chief of police. He never returned a phone call. In a year and a half, I've been struggling with this because my mother's estate cannot be settled. This property is part of her estate. And we asked the chief of police to return a phone call, never once, in a year and a half. We did speak to a sergeant and several other people in there, and they assured us they were looking into it, but they also assured us they can't find the property. They have no idea what the police officer did with it. And my mother's attorney, a state attorney, actually went down to the police department himself and said, listen, I need to sign for her property. And the lady, or whoever the officer was that took the property, told him it'll be a cold day, and I'm quoting her, it'll be a cold day in hell before you see a penny of that. And this was to a highly respected attorney. I don't know if y'all know Joe Powell, but he's a real estate attorney, been around here for 40 years. Was treated like dirt, total disrespect. And there again, he's pursuing this legally in the courts too now because he had no other choice. And for this to happen to myself, I can only imagine what's going on. And I had an attorney when they arrested me, but I can only imagine what's going on with the people in Columbus, Georgia, when they have no attorney, when their property is confiscated, when it's not returned. And it's a year and a half, and I still don't have that property returned to my mother's estate. What chance do they have? So, yes, responsibility, accountability, and transparency in the Columbus Police Department, I would start with an audit. And because I expect that's what if it goes to the Attorney General of the United States, that's what he's going to do. He's going to investigate it and do a complete audit. Because I can assure you what property they took of mine, or not mine, but my mother's, is nothing compared to everybody else's. I'm nothing special in Columbus, Georgia. So if they're doing it to me, they're doing it to everybody else. You have 200,000 people, over 200,000 people in Columbus, Georgia. What chance do they have of having those? And the police can't find it. It's not that it's disappeared one way or the other. This was removed legally. The property was on the police department's property in their parking lot when they did this. So it's not like it got lost from there to going inside and put in the right place. It was never put in the right place according to the police department. They said, we have no accountability of it. We don't know what the officer did with it. We don't know where they put it. And the fact that she told the attorney, you have zero chance of finding this, lends people to believe that maybe that person's absconded some of this property or has removed it or hidden it, either way, but it's not been returned. This type of behavior from the Columbus Police Department is unconscionable. And I just invoking your participation, and the mayor, he's already tried once. He spoke to the chief of police and nothing happened. So I'm invoking the whole council's participation in this to investigate the Columbus Police Department, find out how many people have lost. Go back to this, whoever this person that hid this piece of evidence. And
Mr. Scott, I tell you what we'll do. I did speak with the chief, and I think he is here and has a couple of other folks from the police department. So if you don't mind, if you can have a seat on the front row, and I'm going to ask them to come up and kind of address some of this stuff.
And maybe you could ask him why he didn't return a phone call for a year and a half.
Sure, we'll I'm sure get to that. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, members of council, and City Attorney. And Happy New Year to each of you. So the information that was communicated in brief, the case that was alluded to was a criminal investigation.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
Okay, the case that was just alluded to was a criminal investigation. The investigators that worked on this case actually made a very good case. The decision not to prosecute the case was a decision based upon circumstances from the assistant district attorney that was prosecuting the case. It was based on circumstances that were beyond the assistant district attorney's control. For example, the key witness in this case was deemed not competent enough to stand trial, and so the ADA, the assistant district attorney, did not want to go forward with the case. In fact, the assistant district attorney responded during our complaint investigation from Mr. Scott. The assistant district attorney responded as to the reason why the case was not continued. In fact, the assistant district attorney stated that Detective Truitt, at that time, she's Detective Enfield now, said she made a very good case, and he applauded her for making that case. And so it was not dismissed for it not being a good case or there not being probable cause. So there was not a false arrest that was made regarding this particular case. In addition to that, during this investigation, the estate was turned over to the probate court, where that was handled during the investigation. Since the criminal investigation has been resolved, the estate has been resolved and turned back over to the family. And I know I have Assistant Chief Kennedy here, as well as the investigator for the case here, if there are more detailed questions regarding the case.
I think the main thing that is concerning is if there's any property that was taken and then not returned. I mean, I think that was the gentleman's primary concern.
Right. Based on the investigation, based on the personnel complaint investigation, as well as the criminal investigation, there was no property that was taken and not returned back to Mr. Scott or the family. The estate for the victim was turned over to the probate court. And the judge was here earlier and stated that our estate has been turned back over to the family.
So everything that was found, I guess what you're saying, was turned over to the probate court?
The account
The
has been
account,
turned over to the
okay.
probate court.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, what was alleged is that, the currency that was taken, our financial crimes unit, the state statute governs what can be seized and what cannot be seized. According to the statute regarding seizures related to financial crimes cases, our financial crimes unit was not even entitled to be able to make a seizure regarding that particular case.
Okay. Counselor Crabb?
I'd like to request that Officer Kennedy and Truitt come up and give their side of this story.
Mr. Mayor, I object.
All right. Hang on, Counselor Thomas.
I'm not sure that this is the proper venue for those kinds of conversations. I think that the police department and Mr. Scott need to do whatever you need to do to clear this up. I think the issue that this council has is the contact, is returning phone calls, that sort of thing. I don't want us to get involved in he said, she said, this is what happened, this is what happened. I just don't think this is the proper place to do that, Mr. Mayor.
Can these ladies bring more information about this property?
I think
Just out in the hallway?
I think that what
Maybe all 4 of these individuals can meet in the hallway
They can go
discuss
outside
this.
and do it, but I do not think it is appropriate for this council to have this conversation in public. I mean, it's just,
Okay,
it's
I
just.
concur. Okay, thank you.
And I think that the primary thing I wanted the chief to be able to say is if in fact there was some kind of evidence that was taken out of there that was not returned. And of course, I think what we're hearing from the police department is that anything that was taken out of there has been returned.
And what I want to say is anytime your office gets a phone call from Mr. Scott or his attorney, return the phone call. And you can say the same thing you're saying here, but I really have a problem with our discussing the case and I just have a problem with that.
Mr. City Attorney, any comment on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Just a second. Yes, sir.
But
Mr.
just to be clear, since I've been chief of police, I've not been contacted by Mr. Scott regarding this case. Now, when I was a major 3-4 years ago, when this case was initiated, I spoke to him by phone regarding this particular case as I was over the Office of Professional Standards. but since I've been chief of police, I've not been contacted by him or requested to contact him. And so members of my department have been in communication with him, and that's how the complaint process was taken. So Lieutenant Dow from our robbery and assault investigations unit initiated a complaint based on Mr. Scott's bringing that to his attention, and that complaint was investigated through our normal protocol of investigating.
As long as you can say to us, we have had conversation with Mr. Scott, we return his phone calls, and not necessarily you, but whomever is involved, that's all that I think that we need to deal with right now. And you guys deal with the intricacies of the case and not city
Well, and I
council.
think it's following the right path. There's an
We've
attorney,
certainly contacted him.
there's an attorney for the estate. I think Mr. Scott has had an attorney at least at one time earlier. So that's where it is now, and I think it ought to just follow that path, as
Let it
opposed to
go.
this body making a decision on it.
Yeah, you're correct, Mayor. This council has no jurisdiction. There are procedures in the law. If property were to go unreturned, there are legal proceedings that people can follow to
Okay.
challenge that.
All right, Counselor Tucker?
Yeah, is this something that the Public Safety Advisory?
There's an attorney involved. I wouldn't recommend the Public Safety Advisory Commission to get involved in it. It's already started towards the legal process. All right. Any further questions for the chief? Chief, thank you for being here. Appreciate your patience. Thank you all for being here as well. Mr. Scott, thank you for being here, sir. You've had 5 minutes. What I can do for you, if you want 3 more, you can wait till after the clerk's agenda. Okay. All right. Mr. City Manager, it's on to your agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First on my agenda is Best Buy easement release.
Second. Motion and a second to approve the release of the easement for Best Buy. Any discussion?
I would like for the city manager, if you would, to explain what that is.
And he will. You can do it now, or you can do it right now.
I certainly can. And of course, it all has to do with
Katie.
Katie DeCal.
And that's why I want you to talk.
You know, the city accepted ownership of Katie DeCal February 2001, and there was a resolution for the acceptance of Katy DeCal. And at that time, Katy DeCal was located, as you know, at 2925 Manchester Expressway, and it was and the Best Buy store had that location. They owned that location. In May of 2019, Best Buy was going to sell the property, and they provided the city with a permanent access easement, and there was a resolution for that permanent access easement. And then, of course, Uptown Columbus approached the city about relocating Katy DeCal to the Uptown area, and we did a memorandum of understanding. We executed that, and so Katy DeCal was relocated, I should say, to Uptown on November 29, 2022. And so that permanent access easement that we had with Best Buy is no longer needed. And so we're asking your approval today to quitclaim deed to release the Best Buy access easement. There's no financial requirements by the city.
All right, there is a motion second. If you would, please cue it.
Yes.
Katie's
Still.
now just got a better view of the river.
Yeah.
So if you would cue it, and councilors, you can enter your votes once you register your votes now. And both Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Garrett have voted affirmatively.
So next, Mayor, I've got Uptown Columbus, and I know Ed Warburton is here, City Chattahoochee River Park Management Lease Agreement Renewal. We had a 10-year agreement with them, and it's now time for renewal. And under the terms of the agreement, Uptown Columbus, Inc. will be responsible for all the things that they've been responsible for over the last 10 years, from procurement and oversight of outfitters at city-designated river access points, to access control, coordination with the CPD on security, coordination with Columbus Fire EMS and Department of Natural Resources, safety and rescue, maintenance and trash removal at the city-designated river access point, maintaining of in-river whitewater features. They'll control all city-designated river access points from North Highland Dam to Trade Center Landing, event planning and operations, and all of what they've done over the last 10 years.
Motion to approve. There's no second yet, but we'll. Councilor Davis?
Yes, Ms. City Manager, of course, this is a contract lease agreement that involves the changing of money through different entities. Starting an agreement and getting to where we are today is one thing, but continuing on this, I think that what I would prefer, if it can be produced, or if the parties have the information I'm looking for, I would really like to see some performance data on this contract. It's gone for 10 years. There should be some kind of accounting and ledger on this contract. There's obviously collections involved. It's unique from our other contracts. Our other contracts usually involve leases and things like that for $1. I mean, it's not complicated. This one's a little, we started this agreement, and I just deem it as appropriate that the right thing to do is to see some kind of performance documentation on this agreement before we move forward. Now, I don't mind doing an extension to go ahead and continue until that's all produced, but if it can be produced today, that's great, but I don't think it can. I would like to see that, and if we need to get some eyes on that to understand it, I think there's some other entities involved. Now, that's one part of it. The second one is, do we have an exit clause? We usually build in exit clauses on all of our contracts throughout the government. I didn't see anything in the documentation, that the staff report or documentation we have. I don't, it's certainly not on the resolution or the ordinance, but do we have somewhere the original contract of an exit clause? I think we have an exit clause at any time either parties deem necessary. You can terminate the agreement.
Of course, and I'll yield to the city attorney. I haven't looked at the specifics of the agreement, but we always have an exit clause in our agreements. And certainly we can get the information that you're looking for. And I will just say to you that we project that we'll generate approximately $50,000 in revenue from utilization fees per year of operation, typically around $50,000, but certainly we can make a request for the information that you're looking for. But I will say Uptown Columbus is the ideal organization for us to handle this project. They've been long-standing partners with us over the years, and certainly, I know that you support moving ahead with them, but you just want some additional information, and we'll certainly.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the entities involved. I just think it's good business, good practices.
Sure.
That in a case like this, that we're doing a performance audit, so to speak, on this before we extend it another 10 years. I think that's the appropriate way to go. I'd like to see that and understand that, just making sure that, I know originally the way it was presented to the council, and I was on the council, it was 10 years ago, the Deputy City Manager Arrington, I believe, presented it at that time. Richard Bishop was the director of Uptown, but I know there was a lot of moving parts, and there was a lot of I guess, statements that were made in writing as who does what and how it's done and what's to be done, and even projections. I'd like to understand all that, if that's,
Well, certainly, I mean, we can delay this if you'd like and bring it back, or you can approve it and we'll bring it back.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you're in a hurry, if we need to do, I think the contract's up in February. I don't mind giving you an extension until we have time to be able to produce all that documentation. But I think really, it just happens to be, I guess, an action that's come across the desk that we haven't had one of these in a long time, to be honest with you, and I just think it's a good practice from here on out that we do these kind of things before we extend renewals.
Well, I don't mind delaying it, and we can.
Well, let's hear from the city attorney. He may be able to shed a little bit of light on it.
Yeah, the agreement is strictly for a 10-year renewal. The city receives 3.5% of the prevailing approved outfitter guide services fee for each individual rafter. There is not an exit clause. One can certainly be added that's mutual, reciprocal type exit clause where either party can exit on 90 days written notice or 180 days written notice. That can be put in, but it is not in there now.
All right, Councilor Kogel?
Since this is my first day, and this happens to fall into my district, I'd like to ask council if we can possibly delay this to the next council meeting, just so that I can kind of get my head wrapped around this. 10 years is a long time, so we want to make sure that we kind of hash out the details for trash pickup and maintenance down on what's the face of our city.
Is that a motion?
Well, Mayor, I can just pull it. I don't mind just. Oh, well, go ahead.
So thanks. I'd like to make a motion to delay.
Motion and a second to delay.
We need to withdraw Bruce's.
He didn't get a second.
He didn't get a second. So motion second to delay.
Good point.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right,
Mayor,
it's
if I may,
delayed.
Mr. City Manager, do we need to make an amendment, or can you handle the situation about the standard clause we always use in all?
I mean, when we bring it back, whatever the city attorney said, we'll put it in there,
Okay.
I mean, it's not,
Right.
and certainly we'll, what I'll probably do, Madam Council, I know you made a motion to bring it back, but if you don't mind, we would just do kind of an update at the meeting on the 24th and tell you all this stuff, and then you could vote the second Tuesday in February, or it could be on a consent agenda on the 30th. But at least we'll get to tell you, and then if you like or you want to make some amendments, you could, and then you could actually vote on it on the second Tuesday.
I'm not certain that her motion had a time specific. I think it was just an open-ended delay, which would.
So, I mean, that's what we'd like to do, if that's okay with you, Madam Councilor.
All right, Councilor Crabb?
Thank you. Some of the things that I'd like to see, before we vote on this, I'm looking at this memorandum of understanding, and it has the speculation of what the results of this partnership would be, the economic impact, and how many jobs and things like that. So I'd like to see that in the report that you bring back to us. I also would like to know that there's the proof of insurance. And then,
That's required.
Right, it's
$1 million
well, and then
per
also-
occurrence.
Right. So in the actual contract, is there a default clause? I mean, he talks about an exit, but is there a default clause in it that if either party defaults on some of these agreements in the memorandum of understanding, that it can create a, a voided contract or avoidable contract?
That was not in there 10 years ago. Under Georgia law, if they breach the contract, we can say that the city.
But doesn't it make it easier?
We can say the city is out of it,
Well,
but we
and
can
Doesn't it
put
make
that
it-
in there too.
Or you know, you can put that in there, or the exit clause allows us, if they're in default, I mean, we could.
Well, let's do this. Let's allow the city manager's office to work through the city attorney's office, and let's try to let them bring something back.
Yeah.
And if
They
we'll take into
will
account-
usually draft an exit clause with or without cause. Either party can cancel the agreement on a certain notice, like 180 days. I mean, that's the easiest, but you can get real complicated on what's a
I think
breach and
we'll
what's
be able to
not.
come up
I'll let
with
you
some
do your
simple-
job, but I would like to see something like that in contracts going forward, because there's been some situations that we've gotten into. I mean, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but NCR comes to mind, that we could have avoided some of that situation if we had a exit or a default
That should have
clause
been
in
a
it.
clawback, not necessarily, but yeah, we can
So,
take
I
a
mean, I
look at
think-
that. And
I
I
don't
think the
believe
important
that
thing to
was
remember
city
is this
either,
is an
Development
organization
Authority.
in Uptown Columbus that has been an incredible partner, and what this is really doing is us getting a piece of the money they raise by managing the outfitters down there. So I don't think Uptown will mind. I think, I mean, it has been a partnership. We certainly don't want to get in there and start operating all that. And if you take a look at the kind of growth that's occurred over the last 10 years in Uptown, things are on the right track. So we'll get the city manager's office to come back with some recommendations.
So
to clean
we'll
it
do
up.
an update on the 24th, which is a 5:30 meeting. And then we can either bring it back, if we're all on the same page, on the consent agenda on the 30th, or we would bring it back for a vote on the second Tuesday of February. So Mayor, we'll just handle it in that way.
Okay.
I have a question. Ms. City Manager, it's a direct question. Do we have any documentation, data, accounting or ledgers on file for the last 10 years? We have all that? We just have it on our end, what was given? Have we gone to the other entities to verify and confirm?
Well, typically,
There's three entities involved.
I don't know that we've gone to the other entities, but typically, organizations we deal with, we get a copy of their end-of-year audits, and of course, because we require that.
Well,
you know.
I'll tell you what, I think that.
But now, let me just say, I don't know that the entities that they're dealing with have any obligation to talk to us, you know.
Well, they do, because it's all based on usage of a private contractor.
Well, they don't have an agreement with us. We have an
It's
agreement
part of
with
this-
Uptown.
It's part of this agreement.
I will look into that,
bring
but I
it
don't know that they're going to
It's part
open.
of bodies.
So what are you asking that we get from them?
I'll tell you what, I think it's probably best, I'm going to make a motion that we let our internal auditors look at the performance aspect of it in conjunction with our finance department and look at it together, because I think that's appropriate. That's the kind of performance audit I'm looking for, is just to pull it all together. I think you got to look at the outfitters, I think you got to look at Uptown, and then I think you look at the city side.
So do you want the internal auditor to handle this?
In conjunction with our finance department, they will, because if we've got data on file, they'll pull it. I know we have it on our end.
Well, let me just say this. We can have the internal auditor to handle it, and then they can verify anything, but they're not going to work in conjunction with the internal auditor. When you say that, I don't get that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
let's
if
come back
you want
let's
the
come back
internal-
for the presentation
there's-
next week, and let's see where we are.
I hear you. I mean, there's just standard procedures sometimes that apply to these matters.
So what do you want?
I think I've already stated it.
Pardon?
I think I've already stated it.
You want the internal auditor to handle it?
I made a motion.
Okay, then Mayor, I guess there's a motion.
Well, the only thing that concerns me is you've got two entities that are not obligated to open their information.
Mayor, that's
to
wrong.
the-
That's completely wrong.
No, I don't think it is. They're not a
They are-
part of the
if they're under
city. So
contract,
there is
they're
a
obligated.
motion, there is a motion to ask the auditor, internal auditor, to look at this. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion to that?
Is there a timeline on that?
As fast as I can get it.
Counselor Crabb?
I think what Counselor Davis is talking about is in the agreement 2, and then it's paragraph B. It says UCI and outfitters will develop a system of accountability to determine all outfitter guide services revenue owed to UCI and city for whitewater operations, subject to approval of the city finance department. I think that that's what, am I correct? If that's what you're asking, that we just double check that accounting system that they've set up with our, and it already says it's subject to approval from our city finance department. And so it is part of this agreement, and I don't see anything wrong with us just double checking. I mean, this is, we kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the internal auditor, checking things on a regular basis. I think that this is just one of those situations where let's not put these things on autopilot and just keep on going. Yeah, we haven't had any problems, but is this a time that we can look into it and maybe tweak things at this time and make it even better? I mean, I just think that we have an opportunity to do that right now, and I think if it takes a little bit longer, we can always extend this contract for 90 days or whatever amount of time it takes for us to get that information.
Okay.
And so, Mr. Mayor, whatever the pleasure of council. If you
Right.
want the internal auditor, we'll turn it over to the internal auditor.
Counselor Thomas, did you? Okay. All right, so no other lights are on for discussion. All those in favor of turning it on, passing through the internal auditor, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
Okay. So then, Mayor, I will delay bringing back any update, and we'll bring this back maybe I guess you'll get a report from the internal auditor first, however long that's going to take.
But we'll have to check, make sure that we can work out some kind of extension just to continue to operate.
Pardon?
Well, the auditor's right here, so she hears and she'll get to work on it.
So I will just wait until after the internal auditor appears here at council to update you. And then, based on that,
Okay.
we'll come back at some time thereafter.
Counselor Thomas?
Mr. Mayor or Mr. City Attorney, I'm trying to find out when this expires.
February 4th. Mayor, I think it'd be appropriate if you go on and extend this agreement through the end of February so that we can gather this information.
I say the end of March.
Okay.
All right, there's a motion extension, motion and a second to extend for 90 days. All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll extend the existing contract for 90
All
days
right.
while they do their work.
Yeah, I'll ask staff to turn the matter over to the internal auditors.
Counselor Huff?
Mr. City Manager, just requesting if Councilwoman Cogle get with the city manager and you can get updated in the meantime.
Get with,
As far as bring her up to snuff so she'll be able to follow along.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Next, I've got Enterprise Zone, the Sun South Properties LLC, and this is approval to receive ad valorem tax abatements.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second to approve the enterprise zone qualifications. Any discussion? All in, if you cue it. I think he's there to answer questions if there are any questions about it.
We do have a representative here from Sun South. I don't know if he wants to address anything I know that when they initially submitted the application, they wanted a waiver to building permit fees and other fees. We don't have that authority. You have to get it from here, so I'm not sure if that's something you wanted to address this morning. Okay, all right, so just the abatement.
All right,
Just the property tax abatement, that's all they wanted to
Okay.
discuss.
okay.
Well, Mayor, if there are questions, this is, it's a $7 million investment, and they'll be constructing a vacant parcel of land with improvements scheduled to be completed in 2023, and the city will forfeit basically $47,812 per year for the first 5 years due to the proposed abatement. The school and other taxes, as you know, will not be affected because they don't have to do that. And job growth, we believe job growth improvements made to the properties can offset the loss in property taxes. They meet all of the requirements, creating the number of jobs, and we ask for your approval today.
Okay. There is a motion second. I think some councilors have gone ahead and entered their votes. Those that haven't may do so now.
Now, which one are we voting on? Are we
This is
voting on the
the-
90-day extension?
No. This is the Enterprise Zone Sun South properties. The 90-day extension was already voted for, was a voice vote. Is this to the motion, Councilor Huff?
This is for the tax abatement.
This is for the Enterprise Zone Sun South Properties LLC and tax abatement in accordance with the law
Right.
and an enterprise zone.
That's my only question. This is just following our general procedure for enterprise zone?
Same, yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
My light is not on, so I can't, but I vote in favor.
Can you reopen that vote?
Welcome to my world.
All right, well, Councilor Thomas, you voted in the affirmative. All right, now you can, we'll re-enter your votes for item 3, the Sun House. She's right behind us. Councilor Tucker, you're going to enter your, there it goes. Okay, and Councilor Garrett and Mayor Pro Tem, did they vote affirmative? Okay, so that's unanimous. So
Thank
now
you,
we're on
sir.
item 4.
Thank you. Next, I've got a 2023 legislative agenda.
Excuse me, Councilor Davis?
Yes, Mayor, I just want to say to this subject right here, we have a lot of areas around town that are deemed zones, whether it's opportunity zones, enterprise zones, tax allocation districts, things like that. These are all, I guess, development tools that we have in our pocket. And from a standpoint of development incentives for developers, if they choose to work in these areas, they're entitled to a lot of rights, I guess, or opportunities. Let's just say, it's probably a better word, but then there's standard procedures. So this is just basically a standard procedure because these gentlemen are going to build a new building in the enterprise zone, which actually they probably qualify to apply for a lot of other incentives too, but that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing today. So I just wanted council to understand that it's just a standard.
And Sun South is
Standard
is a
request.
southeastern company. They're throughout the southeast. They are moving off of Parkman Avenue over to the old airport site, which they will utilize the old hangar. So it's going to be a good project, and of course it falls within the boundaries of the enterprise zone. Yes, they have followed proper procedure, and with the help of the tax assessor's office, we've got everything lined up.
Okay.
Thank you, Will.
So next, I've got a 2023 legislative agenda add-on, and this is asking you to approve sending to our delegation, asking them to introduce statewide legislation to prohibit disclosure of job applications to local governments under the Open Records Act until the position applied for has been filled. So, in other words, you know, if and I'll just use this as an example. If you know, with executive level positions, we don't release, the law doesn't require that we release until the position is filled. Because sometimes those people applying for those jobs have not notified the boss, and they've applied and they don't know if they're going to be a finalist, they don't know if they're going to be selected. And so, you know, whether it's applying for a school superintendent or a director level position, you don't release those names until such time that the position has been filled. Well, for lower level positions, for example, and I'll just use a police officer. You know, you have people apply for police officer positions, and then someone does an open records request, want to know everybody's name who's applied for a police officer. Well, the positions haven't been filled. And if you go and put those names out there, then adjacent police departments will know that their people applied, and so we're saying give lower level employees the same protection that the higher level positions have, and that's what this is. And so we're asking your consideration to send it to the delegation and ask them to provide that same protection. City attorney may be able to explain even better the protection that higher level positions have versus lower level positions.
All right, we've got a question from Councilor Crabb. Mr. Fay?
Sure, right now, the state law only protects job applications for the head of a county department or the head of a state agency. Nobody lower than that. So division heads, managers, police officers, whoever are not protected when they file a job application from having that application disclosed under any open records request. And the rationale is all those people and applicants deserve the same level of protection and privacy as the head of a state agency or the head of a county department. That's the rationale.
Have we had any problems with this?
Oh, we've had requests before for job applicants of all sorts of positions.
Has it created a problem?
Well, not that I know of, but personally for those employees, it's a risk.
Changing a job is always a risk.
Yeah.
I don't know, is this a slippery slope where we're starting to limit access of open records? I mean, I don't know. Is this like the beginning of something that could, you know, begin something worse? Like, is this anti-transparency, or, I mean, I'm throwing some of these things that are going through my mind out.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, since I asked for it, let me just say this.
This would take a statewide amendment. Let me say that. Our delegation is going to have to get with other delegations if this is going to go anywhere. So it's a change in the entire state law that you're asking for, but it's a policy decision for the legislator.
Well, and I'm just saying to you that anyone can test the system right now. So, you know, if this does not happen and someone out there just wants to know who all applied for police officer, and I just use that as an example, it could be any other position in the government, and then all their names end up on social media, and all they did is apply. Doesn't say they're going to get the job, they just applied. Why should the world know that I applied for the job and then I don't get it, and everybody, my privacy, I mean, it's out there. That's my thought on it. I'm putting it in council's court to determine whether you want to send it forward or not. Because I'm sure the system will get tested soon. And we'll see how it works out.
All right. Councilor Thomas.
Mr. City Manager, this explanation says to prohibit the disclosure of the job applications to local governments under the Open Records Act until the position applied for has been filled. So I understand the executive level stuff, but does this mean that if, that somebody could request after we fill a police officer position, they could still request?
They could certainly make that request, but if a person, I guess when they realize that they're not going to make the final process, they could withdraw, just like the higher level executive positions do.
Well, if I wanted to know who did that, I would ask you who applied and who withdrew. I mean, and I don't see the protection that you're trying to get at if it can be disclosed after the position is filled. The way I word my open records request, I could request everybody that applied.
And City Attorney, I think the law only requires that you, for example, maybe the ones you interviewed or you're a finalist, the law only requires.
It's right now, for head of a department, it's if you get it down to 3 people and they have not withdrawn their name from consideration, then they're open to public inspection, those 3 names. So,
But the fourth name is not.
That's
The fourth
right.
person is not.
But they can withdraw up until the time of appointment.
Well, I guess part of this too is that, as the city attorney said, if we approve this to go on the legislative agenda, our legislative delegation will have to write it up and get all the ins and outs and the whereases and wherefores. And they may take care of all of this, but I just have a little concern that I guess I'm not real clear on what we're trying to prevent.
Well, and my effort.
And how this would prevent it.
Yeah.
I understand what we're trying to
Yeah.
prevent. I'm not sure how this would prevent that.
Yeah,
but
and it was only
it would depend on the legislation.
I often hear that executive level people have certain protections and lower level people, look, it's just a proposal. If you're not interested, then we can move on. But I'm just saying to you, I think you're going to find that we're going to get tested, and then we're going to have some names.
Mr. City Manager, is this something that HCCG or GMA has requested that
No,
we do this?
no.
Okay.
I have
And
not.
do you have any idea if either of those organizations would be supportive of something like this?
I can't speak for them, but I'm on the GMA board, as is the mayor, and if I ask them, I think they would. I don't think anyone has thought about this person at this lower level.
Okay.
I don't think
Once again, we're leading the pack.
I think.
I can understand the reasoning behind it, but I agree. I think that we need to make sure that it will actually address the issue that we're trying to prevent. And I get that, because a lot of folks will hold back from making application, and we could ultimately lose out on some good people. So I get that.
Well, I know people who said, I'm not going to apply because I don't want my boss to know I applied for whatever position.
And especially in some public safety positions, if my name is going to be on social media or, because now that's what they're doing down in Columbus, Georgia, I'm not going to apply. So it's, what do we want to do?
Councilor Davis?
Well, Mr. City Manager, certainly I'm open to this, and I'm still learning, okay? And I've stated before here, when I'm trying to learn about something, I try to slow it down a little bit. But, the question that keeps coming up in my mind, do we have a problem? Do we have it should be several incidents that we've incurred to get us to this point, because we're asking for an initiative that's going to be statewide coming out of Columbus. I've rarely seen where we've got involved in state initiatives, but we've always gone through GMA. Perhaps the appropriate route, I think the mayor, you serve on the executive board, don't you, of GMA? Maybe the appropriate route, if you want to have success.
Yeah.
You said the delegation would have to start reaching out to everybody else. That may be I don't know if they're gonna wanna do that, but maybe if you wanna have success, the appropriate route would to go through GMA or ACCG or get them on board and let them do it. I'm just talking out loud, okay?
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm still open to what you're saying. I just keep asking the question.
Well-
It's sensitive dealing with an open records request matter and then, you know, and then putting it all together and then at
Yeah.
the same time asking for, out of Columbus, asking for a statewide initiative. I just think we'd have to have some kind of backup of something that we can tell them that this is real and it's happening.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, I think the city attorney's office had a recent request.
Okay.
And so, you know, and that's just what I'm saying to you.
Probably most of us
And-
are unaware of those things, but we have
And,
to ask that question.
and so I think you'll see the test soon.
Yep.
So don't, you know, I'll just say you know, yeah. So do it. So do we want to just pull this, or what do you want to do?
I mean, I think we can just hold it until we can run it by the Legislative Policy Committee out at GMA and do the same thing at ACCG, and we'll get their input on it.
I mean, I'd rather just pull it. I mean, I don't, you know.
Well, but it, you know, here's the deal. We said we haven't had a lot of problem with it. We don't know, because it doesn't impact us. It impacts the employee, and they're not going to call us back and say, hey, you ratted me out to my boss. So anyway, I think let's just hold it for right now. I think it's a good question to ask of the policy committee, legislative policy committees. See what they say.
Okay.
All right, Counselor House, did you?
Well, I think we probably pretty well covered it. I just wanted to make sure, I mean, the higher level people already get this protection.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
this is just extending a protection that higher level people have to lower level employees.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why I'm bringing it.
That's, I think it's probably a pretty good idea.
And so, but we'll see how it works out. Yeah, I mean, I'll pull it. But don't be surprised if what I just described to you doesn't happen soon. So, so I'll pull that. And so we will go to the purchases. And so first I've got membership dues for Georgia Municipal Association. And it's our annual dues, and we're requesting your approval.
Move approval of A through J.
Well, all right, are there any of those items that somebody would like pulled for discussion?
Well, and J is, was emergency purchase, so we really don't need action on that.
Okay. All right,
It is on there, yeah.
there is a motion and a second
Yeah.
to approve the purchases.
I appreciate that.
So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right,
Okay.
Mr. City Manager,
So I've
walk
got-
through those.
Yeah, I've got GMA dues, and then contract extension for security surveillance equipment for public works and miscellaneous locations. And we all know what we're trying to do there with adopted saw. Got household hazardous waste sorting and disposal services. Got repair of a bulldozer for public works. I've got fire apparatus repair, engine 9, and customization services for the court management system. I've got for Metra, Matt Vac, diesel all-terrain litter vacuum, and for Metra service contract for various types of transmissions. And then I've got I, an amendment 5 for construction manager as general contractor services for Columbus Government Center Complex. Costs associated with constructing a full-size mock-up of the future Judicial Center courtroom. And then, as I said, J was an emergency purchase on these 3 vehicles that were available and needed by the sheriff. And those are the purchases, Mayor. And
We got Counselor House.
yeah, and
Thomas, I'm sorry, Councilor Thomas. I got to get my glasses clean.
I'd like to pull I,
Okay.
the general contractor services.
All right. So we have I pulled, and we've got, the motion was made for, we voted on those, though.
Yeah.
So we'd have to ask for reconsideration on that, on I.
On I.
Yeah, is there a question that can be answered?
Well, one of the things that I do want, when I read this, $77,000 to build a mock-up of a courtroom, I was a little taken aback. One of the things I would like to know is where is this going to be built? Where is this going to be done?
And Deputy City Manager Hodge will respond to your question.
And I'll let Director Pruitt respond to specific questions, but what they did was they built a mock-up of the different types of courtrooms that will be in the Judicial Center. We utilized the Bradley building of Synovus, so it's on city property. And we allowed the judges, the district attorney, the assistant district attorney, the clerk's office to come in to actually sit where they would be sitting to look at line of sight, how they would see the defendant, how they would see the prosecution. And so this was done the week of December 16th and December 23rd. So those 2 weeks we had all the judicial parties come in to view how the courtroom would be set up. There'll be some alterations made to that, and then we'll come back again. We want to make sure that when the Judicial Center is built, that all parties agree to how the courtroom would be laid out, whether you have a center bench or a corner bench, whether the clerk's office is sitting in front or next to. So that we've had really good participation on the judicial side for that viewing and that process.
So the mock-up has already been done?
It's in process, yes, ma'am.
So what we're voting on is paying for something that's already been done?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Was this part of the original bid?
It was part of the original bid and part of the original process, but it requires a change order to the agreement to actually put the dollars in the contract, but it's part of the overall contract that was approved by council in the beginning. But this is the dollar value to go with that item that's in the contract.
So,
and because of the changes in the council meeting, we did not get it here before that process took place. So yes, ma'am, that's on us.
Well, the money is there to get this done, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
And
what did you say?
the money is there to get this done.
Has
And
already been approved?
in the total budget, right?
In the total budget, yes, that's correct.
If the money is already in the total budget, why is this being brought to us?
Well, look, we could have delayed and slowed down the process. Just like the vehicles.
I think the question is, why does it take a motion
Why
and a
does this take
change
another
order?
vote? If we've already voted the total amount, why are we
Well,
voting
it
again
takes
on
another vote, no different than
$77,000?
like with ARP. We're going to come back to you for specific votes on different things.
There's a line item in the contract that had to be changed.
There's a line item in the budget for each one of those items. So as the process is continuing, we will come back to council every time to have approval of specific items that's in the overall budget. So it's still within the overall budget that was approved by council for the Judicial Center.
So it's in the overall budget, and you're coming back to us to ask permission to write the check?
Yes, ma'am. It's a change order to the agreement. So every time out of that $200 million total budget, every time there's a line item approved, it's a change order to the agreement. It's part of that process to keep continuing to come back to council every time there's a specific item as we move forward with the Judicial Center.
But let me just say this. If you want us to slow down the process.
No, Mr. City Manager. I just want to understand what we're doing. It was my understanding when I read this, that this was an additional $77,000 on top of what we had already approved. And the city, the deputy city manager has explained to me now that that's not what we're doing.
That is not.
And so I'm okay with that. I don't
Well,
want you to change your process if it doesn't need to be changed. I just need to understand it so that I can make good decisions.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But as I use the example with ARP, you know what we have in ARP. You approved a list of projects. And we said to you, we're going to come back to you with things that you need to approve within that list. But you already approved it.
Well, when you come back, be sure to say that. You've already approved this, we're just coming back to get your approval again.
And we do it with discretionary dollars, like with T-Splosh. You know, we tell you we got $3 million, you approve it, and then we come back to you with each individual project. It's not new. And so I just want to be clear about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Counselor Davis?
No, and I do have some questions about this. I'm sorry, council, you know, I probably got wrapped up in some of these other things, a lot of moving parts, and it just kind of slipped by, but I did have some questions in this area. The city manager just answered some of them. It seems like it was already part of the agreement, but I will have to ask. You know, it's a lot of money to do a mock-up, and then it's going to be basically destroyed. You know, the question is, could we have done better getting on a plane and going somewhere where it's already happened and being able to see what's reality? Because, look, this is not rocket science. You can go on Google right now and see these prototype courtrooms that are out there that basically we have a contractor that's built these courtrooms before, but all these courtrooms are somewhat prototypes of best practices that are on the internet. The architect's just going to fill them in spaces, in spots in space. Somewhere during the design phase with the architects and the internal design side of it, the interior design side of it, this stuff's going to come out. So I'm not sure, you know, the value that's being presented here, but evidently it's part of the contract that we've already signed. I don't view it as a change order. I view it as part of the contract that we've already agreed to pay for. Am I right on that, or is this a change order? Is this something in addition to what we agreed on and we're paying additional monies, or is it part of the contract we've already approved with GC and the GC's partner?
It's part of that original contract, but we are only approving certain amounts as we're moving forward with this process. So the pre-construction services was an amount, and so each time there's an amendment to that overall contract, it's not additional dollars. We're still within our budget that's been allocated for the judicial center.
But we don't have to spend, theoretically, we don't have to spend that money.
If you want a mock-up, you do.
I understand that.
What do you mean you don't have to?
We don't have to spend it, and we still, at the end of the day, whatever the amount the contract is, the final amount is what it is. I'm just hearing you tell we're doing this, and it adds to the final amount of the contract. But if we
No.
don't do it, we could subtract it. Is that what I hear you saying?
We have not, and if we look, and I don't have the amounts in front of me, but there have been the initial pre-construction, and then we've added certain tasks for them to do as we're getting closer to our final construction budget.
I understand.
So part of when this vendor was selected, one of the things that was a task in their agreement was to do this mock-up. And it has served to be very helpful to all of those involved in the judicial side to actually see where they're going to sit, how their views are going to be. So I think it's very helpful, and to take them, all of those clerks and ADAs and judges, to another location, I think it was beneficial And, you know, I wish the
Well,
judges were
it's-
still
it's-
here. I think
Then what I hear you saying is what I say, it's part of the contract.
yes.
They're doing it now. They've constructed, or they've been constructing, and they're just asking for their funds back for doing it. That's what they're doing, but it's part of the total amount,
That's correct. It's part of the total amount.
right? So there's really no savings, you know, if you could go back and do it all over again, maybe, but what I hear you saying is that it's progress in motion. So anyway, but I do, those questions come
And
up.
let me just say too, you know, and I appreciate all the questions, but, you know, we've got some team members here. You know, we don't go out like others and hire construction managers. You know, Ryan has to do his job every single day. And yet, he's doing construction management work. And the same thing with with Deputy City Manager Hodge. So, I mean, you know, they know what they're doing and how to do it, and we appreciate the questions, but I just want to acknowledge the savings, you know, because I've been on the library board and others and see that you pay 10% for a construction manager of a $50 million project. Well, we don't pay them that kind of money, and I think they do a great job.
And I'm going to ask Director Pruitt, he did participate in the process of the mock-up, and I think he might have some comments that he heard from the judges and those participating, and I think it was very helpful.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to add that, you know, $77,000 is a lot of money, but the mock-up is vital to allow the users of the courtroom to sit in their seat. You know, even the clerks were showing us how their printer works, that they need a scanner. And so we can build all that into the mock-ups to make sure we get it right. In our new judicial center, we will have 14 courtrooms. Each one of those courtrooms costs approximately $2 million to fit out with all the millwork, all the AV, all that stuff. So, you know, it's $28 million. And so the $77,000 goes towards ensuring all that technology, all the woodwork, everything is exactly how each court needs it. Because each court's a little different. Probate court doesn't need what Superior Court needs, what juvenile court needs. So we were able to, the mock-up was constructed in a way to customize it for each court so the judges could sit in their seat and sign off on all the equipment in the courtroom.
Okay. Counselor Crabb.
Thank you. I want to thank you guys for your patience with us. We don't see the contract. We hear what's in the contract. And so these questions are just clarifying that. So the contract, it says these are the items that are going to be done, and is there already an estimated cost for each of these items already in the contract? And so are you asking for these because this number in the contract has changed? So we're getting a change order because the number that's in the contract has changed in some way?
So it's been estimated before, now it's just been finalized. So the total project budget is the $200 million that was approved as part of the SPLOST. And we had different line items for design, the mock-up, then eventually the construction. We have a furniture line item in there. So all those different task orders will be brought back to you. So as, you know, almost the next step is as we continue the design, the contractor's going to prepare the final price for the total construction of it. And so we'll bring that back. So we know approximately what it is, but as the design's developed and finalized, we can bring you that final number for your final approval.
Okay, so this is my concern. I have a feeling it's other people at this table's concern too. I don't want us to, be voting on these change orders over the course of this construction, and then we find out at the bottom, at the very end, or maybe there's 5 items left on it, and we've gone over budget. And then we're on the hook because we agreed to the change order. And so then it's our responsibility, and then you have to come back to us, and either we have to cut something, now, and I have a feeling that this is what happened when they built the government center. They get down to the end, and so it's like, okay, well, we underestimated on these items, and we went ahead and spent the extra money on it, and then at the end, oh, wow. There's we can't put shut-off valves on the plumbing because we can't do that. And those end up being problems for counselors 25 years down the road. I've experienced that, where it became my problem, a decision that somebody else made 25 years ago. I don't want to do that to someone else.
Well,
And so I'm saying this just to make you aware of what we're thinking, so that, and I trust that now that you know what we're thinking, you won't do that.
Well, and let me just say, as we go along the way, so you've done this before, many times.
Yeah.
In the same way. And so we're always concerned about, not exceeding our bottom line budget to get the project done. Did you do this, Bill? Were you here when we did this?
No, I was not here for this one.
Okay. But David Arrington was, and we've done many other projects, even the Civic Center. So we are mindful of those concerns that they have, because we have the same concern, and so we can't allow projects to get out of control in terms of spending. Many times we have contingency line item, and so if something goes over in a particular line item, many times we have a contingency budget to take care of it. And then there's up to 10% change orders that we do allow, right?
Yes, there's 10%, is usually for, that the city manager has approval to, but we do always keep a contingency in there, and what's so great about this project is we have the architect and the contractor at the table at the same time. So when we're talking with the judges and they say, we would like to make this change, we can get information real time that change impacts the budget in this way.
But I can certainly say now, if you want us to come back to you before we move forward with making decisions, we are happy to do it.
Well, I think we're all asking just for reassurance.
Okay.
This is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you guys deal with it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We do not. And we just want reassurances that you guys are thinking the same way.
Yeah, and I assure you we are.
All right, Councilor Kogel.
Is the $77,000 already allocated in the budget?
Yes, we had a line item.
But it hasn't gone up, it hasn't gone over what you originally budgeted
No,
for?
we were, as part of the design and pre-construction process, it's included in that number that we originally had.
Right, but it just hasn't gone over what you've already budgeted for, correct? Okay.
Councilor House.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I certainly don't want to micromanage what's going on with that building, because I don't know enough to do it. But it probably would be reassuring to us at some reoccurring period, I don't know if it's every 6 months, every 3 months, every year, to come back and tell us we thought it was going to be 77,000 and it was 75. I mean, 77,000 is chump change compared to 200 million. But somewhere in there, if you want to reassure us and show us how good the estimates were.
We can give you periodic updates, whether quarterly, every 6 months, but.
Yeah, but don't want to slow the process.
I mean, but we want you to be comfortable.
Well, and that's kind of the way to make us comfortable. Just tell us every now and then how it's going.
And because, as you know, I, as city manager, under emergency purchases, approved millions of dollars. I mean, if there's a pothole, a sinkhole out there that's going to cost $8 million, and we need to get it done. I'm not going to wait for another council meeting I'm going to tell them, go do it. And, you know, because it has to be done, so, you know.
Well, but I think there's an opportunity for us to periodically, quarterly say, hey, quick update, 2 seconds, we're on budget.
Yeah, I mean, we happily, we can do that.
I think it's, and I understand the concern, because when you get questions from people out in the public, and then you say, nope, everything's good, everything is good, everything is good, and then it says, oh, we're 2% over budget.
Yeah,
And so that's,
and I often, you know, say that, you know, in our business and what they do and what we do, we got to get it right. We're not private sector. You know, Council Davis, if you go over budget, you know, I mean, in your business, I mean, you know, you don't want to do that, but it happens. You know that. But when we go over budget, in our business, it's crucifixion time. That's the difference. But in private sector, not with you, but others, it happens, you never know about it.
that's the difference between private money and public.
Absolutely.
So do we need to make
Counselor
a
Davis?
motion on
It's already been approved. We'd have to pull it out.
I thought we pulled it.
No, the
Yeah.
vote had already been made. Counselor Davis?
Well, and look, Mr. City Manager, I understand. Usually in our business, the way we do it and others is when you have a building, you go in and you do it before you start covering all the walls, and then you can walk through and get everything done. There's a way to do it. I think and we're probably going to have more of these conversations, but you know, 200 million, the magnitude of this building, the square footage, you know, there are different ways to look at it, but I think our concern is more about the redundancy, more about is there better ways, better practices, other ways to do the same thing without having to spend that kind of money. Those are fair questions. They're all fair.
Sure.
It's not taking a shot at somebody that's involved in the construction process of this new facility, or their ability in what they're capable of doing and what they bring to the table. There's nothing about that. I think it all, when we see it with limited information, sometimes we have to ask these questions. And, you know, yeah, if it possibly could have been done another way. There are floor plans, there are elevations, there are things that if you're capable of reading the plans along with the contractors and engineers and architects and all, you can do the same thing. Do you need to do a mock-up at such an early stage? You know, which would be a question I have. We don't even have a building and we're doing a mock-up, which I'm sure they're going to go through this exercise again. But I think it's appropriate that we can ask the questions about these things, and they're all valid. But, you know, I understand a lot better today. It's already in motion. It's in progress. It's being done. Hopefully there's a contribution that comes out of it. But we know we hired consultants, judicial consultants. Mm-hmm. And if I remember the contract, they've got a lot of input into this, and others who have been involved in this area who have experience dealing with judicial centers. So, yeah, I mean, these are valid questions, and I just don't want you or the staff to think that we're beating anybody up. We're not. We're just asking questions, because hopefully, I mean, our desire is to save as much money as we can for the taxpayers at the end of the day. If you don't go through the exercise, maybe you come under budget. You know, that's kind of what everybody's saying.
Well, and I think they're all fair questions. Sometimes the way they're asked it's the way they ask.
Yeah,
All right.
that's fair.
Counselor Thomas?
Mr. City Manager and Deputy City Manager, I think the thing that threw me off was the use of the word amendment. Amendment to me means change, means something different. And so from now on, when you bring these back to us, if you would just say to us, Councilor Thomas, this is not a change, we have to say amendment because that's what the law says we have to do, and that's what the accounting stuff does. Just make sure that we understand that this is not a new proposal. I don't have a problem at all with you building this thing and having these judges take a look at it. But I do have a problem with if this was an additional $77,000 I have a problem with that. So just as you come back to me, if you need for financial audit reasons or whatever else to call it an amendment, call it an amendment. But just say it's not changing what we have already done. It is merely bringing it forward. I would appreciate that
Sure,
kind of clarification. Thank
sure.
you.
But again, I do want,
Yep.
when I talk about commending them for what they do, you know, your work is awesome. And you know, I know people in public sector and in private sector who hire construction managers on every project, and it's up to 10%. And a lot of money gets paid out, but we have competent, hardworking staff who get it done for us, and that money goes into the project and the taxpayers benefit. So thank you for your work.
Director Pruitt, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to mention our current schedule, just real briefly for the Judicial Center, is right now in April, we would be scheduled to come back to this body to show you kind of a 90% design along with a budget where we sit at that time, at that level. So they'll have, 3D models, they'll have some animations showing you the building. So that's where we're at. We're working through with all the departments, keep having continuous meetings with them. So by April, we should have about 90%, and then this upcoming summer, we would have a final 100% set with the budget for everybody to sign off on.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Mayor, that concludes my agenda other than the jail update, and so Deputy City Manager Hodge is going to do that at this time.
Great. I was waiting for the presentation to come up. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm also joined again by Director Pruitt, who's been involved in this process as well as the sheriff is here and his staff. We have continued to work through issues at the jail along with Public Works on the maintenance side. Just wanted to give you an update on where we're at with the jail. Again, it's located on 10th Street. Capacity right now is 1,069 beds, and that's comprised of 4 sections. The stockade, which is used by trustees, the county jail, which was constructed in 1959, 63 years old. That portion is no longer in use. We have Tower 1 that was constructed in 1985, so it's 37 years old. And Tower 2, which was constructed in 2002, so it's 20 years old. And you've heard from the Director of Public Works, I believe at the December 13th meeting, about some ongoing maintenance issues that we've had at the jail. Those have continued. Just like we had with the Government Center, we're looking at an assessment of that facility and where do we go from here. And so back in 22, we did have an assessment done by Jericho Design Group through our consultants that's actually looking at our Judicial Center and City Hall. So we contracted with Jericho Design Group through our consultant, and they looked at providing an assessment of the jail, both for the staff as well as the physical assessment. And so they looked at the different components up at the top, just to get you oriented. That is Recorder's Court, that's in pink, and then the jail sits south of that between 6th Avenue and at 10th Street. So this is their assessment. This is not staff assessment. This is the assessment that we had done by the consultant, so I'm sharing their information with you. They felt that most of the facility components were at the end of their life. The exterior building veneer is failing. Plumbing systems, which you've heard from the Public Works Director about the continued issues that we've had with the plumbing, feel that those are failing. The ceiling, the floors, and walls need to be replaced, and the security system needs to be upgraded. Just a few pictures of some of the existing conditions inside the building. We provide pictures. We don't want to in any way provide any kind of security information. So a lot of these pictures are just standard pictures of the leaks, water damage. You'll see some of the existing conditions of the showers. Now, we have done some work in the shower area over the last several years to try to make improvements in those areas. Inadequate infrastructure, you can see they have a lot of power cords that they've had to put in the facility in order to do their work. You'll see desks kind of in the hallway as they've outgrown the facility. And then there's been obviously some facility abuse with inmates in this particular building. So there are some things that they've been working through with Public Works to try to address some of those existing conditions. And then also, as you can see in this picture, the design might not necessarily meet the current standards for a judicial, or for a jail. Sorry, I'm still stuck on judicial center. Some of the issues that they found in their analysis on operations, those include that the design of the housing units could contribute to a dangerous situation for management. There's some blind spots in those areas. Most of the support areas do not take into consideration best practices for jails. And then obviously the rise in healthcare and mental health services for inmate has outpaced this current facility. This facility kind of is a make-do. They've done the best they could with the facility that they have. Staff and inmate safety is compromised due to the cross-flow of intake. And then staff supportive areas are either highly inadequate or non-existent. And you can see that from the photos that's provided. Again, outdoor yards they felt were dangerous in some areas. And you can see that they're really crowded in the medical and mental health areas. And one of the things that they notated, and I'm sure the sheriff can comment on that, is how the inmates flow through the building, flow through some of the intake areas. Property storage, you can see the trash bags trying to prevent some of the plumbing issues that we've had in the jail, and they've outgrown their storage areas. So options for improvements, again, this is from the initial assessment done last year. For handling the issues at the jail, their recommendation for option one at a minimum was to make improvements to the existing facility. They did look at improvements of the existing facility, what they felt needed to be done. That came in at $102.2 million. There are some soft costs that they've included in this initial option one assessment. Option two is a phased replacement approach. This would be to replace and add some new 100 beds on the west side of the building, and then to come back in and do a replacement of the total beds that's provided, kind of rearrange the parking in that location. This estimate came in at $217 million. And this would be a phased approach so that it could remain on this site. That does, again, include some improvements and soft costs associated with this particular option. Then they also looked at, again, option three, which would be a complete new facility at another site. Obviously, it would have to be at a different site. That cost came in at $196.65 million. So this is just a summary of the options. Again, this was an assessment that we did last year. And there are three different options that they came up with related to how to make these improvements at the jail. Since that time, we have looked at those cost estimates. We've provided some escalation and total costs of construction, design, contingency, all the costs associated with that, and we have updated those options 1, 2, and 3. and looked at what the funding sources could potentially be for this type of facility and these types of options. We looked at Columbus Building Authority, and for these examples, I used a 5% interest rate. Our last interest rate that we did on the bonds, we had 4.5%. There's been a lot of fluctuation in the market, so for this is just informational purposes only, I used a 5% interest rate. So at option one, at an escalated cost of $138 million, it would be about $9 million per year. That would require millage of 1.44 mils, and then also utilizing the OLOST public safety 1.5 million to meet that $9 million annual debt service. Again, for option two, $277 million, and this would be the escalated costs from where we were over a year ago. That would be $18.1 million. That would require 3.19 mils, along with 1.5 in other local option sales tax funding. And then option three at $261 million. That's a $17 million annual cost for 30 years, 2.98